Welcome to this episode of Meet the Faculty. Today we have got Anna, actually, I don't even know how to say your last name, Desmarais.
Not bad, not bad. You have two choices. You can say it
Desmarais.
the American way, which would be Damaris, or you could say Desmarais, which is the correct French pronunciation.
I think I did half of it. I said Des.
Exactly, exactly. Yes, yes.
So,
It's always one of 7 or 8 variations, and you picked one of the more common ones. So technically it's Desmarais.
okay, Desmarais. Well, and that is even an indicator to your interesting background, which we will get into. But Anna is one of our newest faculty members, and she is so much fun that I think the first time we had a chat, it could have gone on forever.
Yeah.
So we want to just learn more about you so that everyone in School of Humankind will know a little bit about the person who's going to be giving some talks in the future. And you do have an upcoming talk next week, which is what it was the title of it again?
The title is Hormones, Health, and Happiness, colon, your guide to, your complete roadmap to thriving after 40.
And who wouldn't want that? All want to thrive after 40 because midlife is
Technically, midlife starts at 45. It's 45 to 65, according to the medical community. Yeah, that's officially
65
midlife.
is even midlife.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's go. Well, why don't you tell us, okay, where are you right now? Because I think the audience can see you're in somewhere warm and I'm in somewhere cold. We are dressed
Wait, can you
really
see me
differently.
sweat? Is that what you're saying? Because I actually am. I have like a little film. I'm like, oh.
Well,
I
with
turned
your
crazy.
hair is kind of covering any kind of clothing, so you could
Well,
be naked.
it's starting to stick. So, so I'm in Mexico.
Okay,
I'm currently in
are you
Mexico.
originally from Mexico?
No, I have no blood relation to Mexico as far as I know. I ended up here during the pandemic the first time because I was a nurse during the pandemic. I was an ER nurse in the US. I was living in Florida, and I was basically having a bit of a breakdown and I needed to get out because for me, I knew that travel was always really healing for me. That was kind of always my go-to when I felt like I needed to get my head back on straight. And it was the pandemic. You couldn't travel. So there was one place open. Mexico kept its borders open. I don't know if you remember that, but Mexico had its
Oh,
borders open in the pandemic. Yeah. And so it was actually like a huge migration of people like digital nomads and all kinds of people who ended up moving to Mexico during the pandemic. So interesting times for us and for Mexico. So I was like, well, I've got very few choices here, maybe just one. So I ended up coming here for the first time and I absolutely fell in love with it. I had taken it for granted growing up in the US and living there for most of my life. I kind of always was like, oh, it's right there. I'll go sometime. And I never went. So the first time I went to Mexico was just, a few years ago. So I had traveled everywhere else, but I had never been to Mexico. And so I think, we do that. We things that are close to us, things that we're like, oh, it's there, it's not going anywhere. I'll go there some other day. We take it for granted and it just ends up never happening until all the other borders close.
so
But
was the Canadian US Canada border closed like
I
to
don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was, but yeah, I mean, I don't remember
you don't
specifically. It's
remember
a
because
blur.
you preferred to go to Mexico. What's up with that?
I think I don't remember because it was all a blur. I think it was also
Yeah.
traumatic that I'm like, oh, I don't remember all the details. But I believe Canada was closed as well, if I'm not
Probably,
mistaken. Yeah,
probably.
yeah,
I'll give you that one.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So that's how I
so
ended up here the first time, and I fell in love with it. Now here I am again.
well, that's amazing. We're gonna go a little bit more into your background to see what you're doing there, but where did you want to start? Did you want to start in your personal story? Because you have got such an interesting backstory. Um,
Where do we start?
you were born in the States?
Yes, I was born in New Hampshire, and I lived there for my childhood, and then I grew up in Michigan. And when I was 19, that ended my US part of my life for a really long time. I ended up moving to Italy for a couple of years. And then after that, I moved to South Korea for about 16 years. And from South Korea, then I ended up moving back to the US so I could go to nursing school and become a nurse. So that's kind of where this whole, now I fast forward through the pandemic. So that's how that all happened.
The
So
the number of years you talk about, I'm just like, you don't look like you are capable of having that number of years. So, okay, in South Korea for 16 years
yes,
and then back to do your nursing degree.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
and then working
That
in
was
the
in Miami.
Okay. So
Yes, yeah.
tell us who like what are you doing now and
Mhm.
how has your background led to what you're doing now?
Okay, let's go back to Korea. This is a good place to start.
All right.
So I was there. I was a voice actor, a DJ, and then I ended up co-owning a restaurant slash lounge bar. And then from there, I ended up opening up a martial arts yoga fitness studio. I know, completely random. There's like nothing tying any of that together.
I know. I like how you say from there. I'm going, there is no from there. There is like one jump.
Now you
Lots
know a
of
little bit
jump.
about me. I'm just like all over the place. So while I owned that martial arts yoga fitness studio, one thing that I discovered was that I'm actually really, really passionate about health and really passionate about giving people a space to be able to get healthy in whatever way that means to them. So for some it's just physical health. For some it's also like learning discipline and, gaining more confidence. And so it's for mental health, emotional health, and all of that as well. And so I decided it was time to move back to the US. I was like, I'm not getting any younger and I don't really want to like get old in Korea. So, and my niece and nephews were born, you know how all that happens. So I said, it's time to move back to the US. And I said, what am I going to do there? Be a DJ? No. That was like already in my past. I was too old. So I sat with that and I said, I really am passionate about health. Right. And I had gone through my own health scare and I ended up in the ER in Korea at one point. And so it just opened up that whole the curiosity about learning more about the human body because I was into exercise and started getting into nutrition. And then I was like, I want to go deeper. So I said, nursing school, that's the next step. So I could go deeper into learning about health and the human body and chronic illness and all of that. So I ended up going to University of Miami Nursing School, and that's how I ended up in Florida. So while I was in nursing school, my favorite clinicals by far was the ER. The whole time I was in nursing school, I'm like, I'm not even sure if nursing is for me. I was doing all the clinicals and I wasn't 100% loving it. And then our very last portion of nursing school, we got to choose our top choices for doing our clinicals at. And I said, I want to try the ER. I'm just so curious, and so I tried it and I was like, that's it, done. I found it. I found my place.
Wow.
So when I graduated from nursing school, you can't get a job as an ER nurse fresh out of nursing school. So I actually ended up working in home health and in corrections, meaning I worked in the prison system. So I was a prison nurse for a little while until I could find a residency program that would take me and train me in the ER so I could become an ER nurse. And so that's what happened. So I
Wow.
became an ER nurse, went through the residency program, and not too long after that, the pandemic hit. And Florida was the epicenter of the pandemic after New York. So New York was where it was like really, really bad. And then it became Florida. And so it was nuts. It was really, really all of the things you saw on the news, like it was just, so much happening. And we were just powering through it because that's what we were all doing during the pandemic is just surviving, right? And so you just survive and you survive and you power through it. And I would go to work and it was all COVID, right? And I was working mostly in the COVID section and of the ER. I come home and we were all on lockdown and I was living on Miami Beach at the time. And they even fenced off the beach. So we couldn't even go on the beach. Like it was like we were trapped in our houses. So
Wow.
yeah, so I was just like trapped in my house. I became like really unhealthy because I was stressed emotionally, everything, all the things. I picked up really, really horrible coping mechanisms. I started drinking way too much wine, all this stuff. And I didn't realize that I was getting burnt out because it was just happening so fast.
Yeah.
So as soon as I could, I became a travel nurse because I had heard that California was like the paradise for nurses because they had ratios and they had really good pay. Like compared to Florida, it seemed like absolute heaven because Florida is notoriously bad to its nurses.
Oh, so what
Yeah.
exactly is a travel nurse?
So travel nurse is when you pick up contracts for hospitals that are having a shortage. So
Okay.
yeah, so you kind of
Like
pick
a
your place.
substitute teacher. You just go where you're called? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you have a choice. You have a choice in the matter. They don't just send you anywhere. You can pick your places. You have an agent, and so it's kind of a negotiation. So
Ooh.
usually it's a 13-week contract. And so I was like, yes, this is my chance to go to California. So I ended up going to California thinking, wow, yay, save me because it's horrible where I am. And I went to California and it was a lot better. It was a lot better, but it was still
Still COVID
pandemic
stuff.
and it was still, yeah,
Ah,
exactly. It was still all of that. And so I said, and so fast forward, I started taking these extended breaks going to Mexico because I knew that I loved it in Mexico. And so it was like, that was how I survived. And so I go to Mexico and I kept going and going often. And then I ended up saying, you know what? I think I just need a break from the ER or a break from nursing in general. And so I decided to leave my travel nursing position. And I said, I'm just going to get in my car with my stuff and my cat and drive to Mexico. Because I was in California at the time in San Diego. So it was just across the border.
right, right.
So I drove 40 hours down to the Pacific coast of Mexico and I landed in a little surf town. Beautiful beach. And I said, okay, it's time to start figuring out the rest of my life. So I'd already started a nurse coaching certification program. So what a nurse coach is a registered nurse who gets further training in holistic nursing and in transformational life coaching. And so we're taught to like really sit with people and help them work through whatever it is, really. I mean, I think a lot of people assume that since we're nurses, it's just about physical health, but it's so much more than that. In fact, we get pretty spiritual, actually. Like we get really, really deep. So that's I had already started that while I was in California. And so when I was in Mexico, it was my time to like finish that and really dive deep into that and start working with clients pro bono. It was a lot cheaper for me to live in Mexico, and so I was able to, I had that opportunity to do that. So yeah, that's how that began. And then while I was in Mexico, I ended up another path opened up where I was able to start learning and working with plant medicines and then started working in retreats. And so one thing led to another. And so that's kind of part of my life as well. So now,
Yes.
so I'll put it all together. So now I am a integrative holistic nurse coach and I work in retreats in Mexico. And so they do overlap. And I mostly work with women over the age of 40, as you already know from the title of my workshop that's coming up. But basically women in midlife, because we are a largely ignored demographic in the medical community and in society, let's be
Yes.
real.
Yes.
And and so there isn't a whole lot of guidance out there, and especially when it comes to our health after perimenopause hits. So once there is those hormonal changes begin, there's a lot of misunderstanding out there, a lot of misinformation, a lot of confusion, a lot of overwhelm, frustration, all of those things. So it's kind of like my mission to help guide women in this stage of life to be like, all right, how can we feel better? How can we make the most of our lives from here on out?
Okay.
So that's the mission that I'm on right now.
And that's a huge one. And it takes me back to the knowledge of in the past, we've done all this medical research on men, male
Yes.
bodies. I think in the past, to be fair to people, maybe they thought it was more chivalrous. We don't want to test on women because it's just, women are so delicate. But as a result, we have so much information on a male body that we just think is transferable to a female body, except a few extra parts you got to figure out. And all of those female parts are not as studied as we think they should be. There's so much, um, not even misinformation, but there's no information.
Yeah. That's exactly it. It's like we're fooling ourselves into thinking that we have a lot of information, but the truth is there's a lot of things that work completely differently in men's and women's bodies, and especially after these hormonal changes begin. And so I love your very, very positive perspective that it was chivalry. I
I'm
love
trying to
that.
be fair,
You are
trying to
the
be fair.
eternal. Yes. What an optimist you are, Angela. So I tend to think it's something else. But speaking just from a scientific perspective, just from the scientific community, it's really just because it was too much of a pain to work with women because of the periods, because of the
Oh,
cycles, and
yeah.
because of the fluctuating hormones, right? It's like you don't have a standard. You
Well,
got to think all these
that's
different
a
factors.
good point. That's a good point, Anna, because I was talking to a friend of mine. He actually helps do research on women's health now. And he was the one who brought this to my attention. And he was talking about they didn't want, I mean, in the old days, the women would be, there was a classification that they were witches. Um, because and his theory, and there was a paper written on this, was because there was, for instance, endometriosis, there was PMS, and the women would be in pain, they would cry out, they would just go out of their minds because of these hormonal changes and the pain that they were going through that there was no solution for. So instead of actually being curious, it was like they're witches. So let's just hide them away or put them in jail. And then, they'd get over it because that's what happens. You get out of that period of the month and then they could go. So that was an interesting comment. And I'm just like, I'm so glad I didn't live back then. I'd be in jail once a month. Like, come on.
Exactly. It's like, I mean, we've come such a long way. Of course, we have really far to go, especially now that, like, because, I was even under the impression for so long that we have come so far as, equality and women's rights and all of that. And then I started learning about all of this, and I'm like, wait a second, they haven't even done the research on us. They just took what they learned on men and just said, oh, just apply the same information on a smaller body. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter, it's a completely different body. It's just, okay, they weigh less and we'll just apply that information to there. So it's like they're just now starting to do research on women's bodies, and especially after perimenopause and beyond. I didn't even know the term perimenopause until I went to nursing school. Like, no, like this is all very new
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
All very
And
new.
it shouldn't be, it's our bodies. But so hormones, to me, hormones are the gifts that just keep giving because I'm in the demographic you're talking about and sort of in this unsure way of like, is that my hormones or like what's happening to my
Yeah.
body right now? Tell us like a little bit about maybe your foundation of what you're going to talk about, but all this hormonal talk, give me some wisdom.
Yeah, I'd love to. So it's very confusing, very confusing. And the reasons are multifold, right? So it's because when estrogen starts to decline, it affects every single system in our bodies because we have estrogen receptors in literally every system. Brain, heart, lungs, GI tract, our joints are everywhere, right? So when estrogen declines, it's
And
going to affect all of those things in different ways in different women. We all present differently. So one woman will have the hot flashes and the mood swings. Another woman will have the brain fog and the joint pain. There really is no formula. And then to make matters even more confusing, perimenopause, there is no set of symptoms or age of onset or test even. None of that. We don't have any of that. So the way perimenopause is diagnosed is just through, okay, are you over the age of 40-ish and are you starting to have symptoms? Then yeah, you might be in perimenopause.
what,
So
like, isn't there a test you can do? Can you test your hormones or,
you can test your hormones, but they say nothing in perimenopause because they're always fluctuating. So unless you are doing several tests over a short period of time and like monitoring it, like there's no way to actually say, oh yeah, here's the pattern. Yes, you're definitely in perimenopause. There is none of that. It's just useless to even get a hormone test done. So the way perimenopause is diagnosed, diagnose, it's not a diagnosis, but is just through the symptoms and through your, your age is above here, so I guess we can assume this. So it lasts like 7 to 10 years before you actually go through menopause, right? So it's very like, and it's a different journey for every woman. So we're starting there now, right? We're starting with all this indescript stuff.
We're starting in this cloud of fog, and it's like,
Exactly.
are you a certain age and are you going crazy? You're welcome to the club. Come on in.
Exactly, exactly.
So what
And
do you do with these people? Like if I come to you and I say, I have no clue what's going on with my body, how do you work with people like that?
yeah, so I try my best to simplify it because it's so overwhelming
Yeah.
since we have so many different organ systems already, even before perimenopause starts, to understand our physiology and anatomy is already complicated, right? So I don't want to overcomplicate things. Like, so I'll meet them where they are. Okay, what are the symptoms that are bothering you the most? Here is the evidence-based methods, remedies, supplements, nutrition, whatever. This is what the research has found that can help you with these particular symptoms. But at the same time, we need to take care of our overall health. And this is going to be, just because we're aging anyway, right? Like perimenopause, menopause aside, we are aging. And so we need to take care of our health as we age. And that looks different from when we were younger. There are certain things we need, certain vitamins and minerals that we need more of. For example, we need to think more about reducing stress because our stress tolerance decreases with age, things like that.
There's
So
there is so much to do with like aging that you don't realize until you get there because I was seeing these on Amazon. There's like knee pillows and you're going, why would you need a knee pillow? And then all of a sudden, I need a knee pillow.
yeah, totally. I have that too. Like when I try to do yoga and my knee is on the mat and I'm just like, ow. I mean, I need a knee pillow for when I do yoga. But yeah, so we got to think about things like inflammation. So this is a big one. I really, really like to focus on inflammation because inflammation, or sorry, chronic inflammation to be more specific, is the underlying process that is the precursor to chronic illness. So chronic illness being heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, Alzheimer's, even certain types of cancer. So by addressing chronic inflammation, you are hopefully staving off those chronic illnesses. Now, here's the thing, is that once we enter perimenopause, estrogen is a buffer to inflammation. So once the estrogen declines, the tendency for inflammation to increase goes up. But it's okay. There's solutions.
Okay.
It's okay. And so what I like to do is really bring it back to the basics because I think what I see happening now, now everybody's talking about perimenopause and menopause. And so it's just like with everything else, with the beauty industry and diet culture, they're preying on women, right? They're saying, oh, well, I've got the solution. Here's a pill. Here's a concoction. Here's a, whatever. Pay this much money and it's going to give you all the relief in the world.
Yeah.
And so you've got all these women just desperate to help themselves feel better because we don't have so many answers and there's so much misinformation out there and so many people are misguided on what's happening with our bodies because we haven't been taught by anybody. So now you get all these snake oil salesmen, selling all this stuff and so all these women are buying and not really finding any relief. So one of the things I try to do is to get, to weed through all of that BS and be like, okay, this has evidence. This does not have evidence. This is garbage. There's nothing there. But, at the same time, let's go back to the basics because it always comes back down to hydration, nutrition, physical activity, reducing stress, getting quality sleep, mindfulness, all of these things, because anxiety tends to increase in with the estrogen decline as well, because we have estrogen receptors in our brain.
What else
So
gets worse? It's like everything is touched by this decrease of estrogen.
exactly, everything is touched. But what I want to do is instill hope and let women know that there are solutions. It's just that sometimes we're going for the wrong ones. We're going for the quick fixes,
Yeah.
the things that don't actually work. But what we need to do is have a sustainable plan. Okay, so for a lot of women, that includes starting to take hormone replacement therapy. That's always something to consider. Then there's also just looking at your nutrition and lifestyle, because that, whether or not you take HRT, hormone replacement therapy, that is still going to really help you with your symptoms, but also to improve your health as you age.
Yeah.
So coming back to the basics, stop, reaching for those pills and supplements and quick fixes and that new diet that you saw on Instagram or whatever it is, like bring it back to the basics.
And
And
are you finding that really hard for your clients? Because, in everything we're doing, that's the foundation. And we seem to just like, I want to do what I do, but
yeah,
just give me a pill to fix what I'm
yeah,
doing,
exactly.
and it's really hard to take that look and see that if you just got more sleep or if you just moved a little more,
Uh-huh.
why are people so reluctant to
Yeah.
change those foundational things?
I mean, it's such a great question, but we don't like change. We as humans, we don't like change, and we don't like to do anything that's going to take work over a long period, especially over a lifetime, right? But we have to start thinking about making these permanent changes. But what I try to do is break it down and step by step and say, like, okay, we don't have to do a complete overhaul because that's what's scary. Nobody
Yeah,
wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that. So instead of doing a complete overhaul, I said, okay, what new healthy habit can we change or add this week? Like, can we add 2 more servings of vegetables per day? Can we start drinking 64 ounces of water per day? What can we do this week? Oh, yeah, 64 ounces of water every day. I can do that. Great, start there. And then from there, once that becomes a habit, then you start adding more and more and more. And pretty soon you've got like a complete overhaul. You just didn't do it overnight. You just did it over an extended period of time. But I like to think of it this way, like if you change one habit a week, that's 52 habits you've changed after a year. So after a year, you're a completely different person if you want to be, if you just do it step by step. So that's one thing that I like to do is try to break things down so it's not so overwhelming. And then also, I think what people don't realize is the power of accountability. And that is where, having a coach really helps because then you have somebody you're meeting with every single week that's holding you accountable, that's meeting you halfway, trying to figure out what is the next best goal for you for this week. And so that way, after a period of time working together, then you had somebody kind of gently guiding you along instead of just leaving you to do it all yourself. Because let's be real, like most of us know what we're supposed to do as far as nutrition, exercise, stress reduction. Like most of us know.
oh
I mean, it's all out there. The information is out there. I mean, sure, there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of misunderstandings, of course, but there are certain basics we know. We know we're supposed to reduce processed foods and refined sugars. We know we're supposed to eat more fruits and vegetables. We know that. Okay. So why aren't we doing that?
yeah, that's the big why, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so it's nice when you decide it's like, okay, I just need to do this. And then you decide, okay, I'm just going to invest in a coach
Yeah,
and they're going to hold me accountable to it. And it's like, it makes it so much easier. It's still so much easier when you got somebody holding you accountable.
yeah,
But the thing is you have to make that decision, right? You have to decide. And hopefully people decide before it gets serious. Like I started turning my health around after I went to the ER. Like what could have happened had I changed things before?
yeah,
So I learned my lesson the hard way, and I'm hoping that other people won't learn it the hard way. But right now it's like what I love about good nutrition and a healthy lifestyle is that it's going to help relieve physical, mental, emotional stuff that you're going through in midlife with perimenopause and menopause, and it's going to set you up for better health as you age. So it's a win-win. Like it's not like it's a different formula. Like our bodies
yeah.
react to good nutrition the same way. We got it. We're fueling our bodies. Like it's going to be whatever stage of life you're in, it's going to be beneficial for you. So I think that's like kind of the upside to taking it step by step, because then you're making permanent lifestyle changes that you don't have to change pretty much for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And I really like how you talk about, just changing a habit a week. And because you're right, when you said 52 habits, it's like, what? That seems like such a huge number when you're looking at it, but yeah, there are 52 weeks. So if we just change something every week, it really adds up.
Yeah, and in only a year, you can be completely transformed, and a year goes by really quickly.
And with all the cell renewal, you're almost like a totally new body too.
Absolutely. Yeah. We renew this a new us in 3 months, I think it is. So it's like 90 days, I
Yeah,
believe.
which is really crazy, really
It is,
crazy.
it is, it is. But beyond all of this, physical stuff like nutrition and everything, what I also work with is like the emotional side.
Yeah,
And I really truly believe that emotional healing is an absolutely crucial part of the process for many reasons, because it actually does affect your physical health to be holding on to emotional trauma and things like that. So it's stuff that needs to be worked through and released in a safe way, because it can manifest as physical ailments. And this is not just hypothetical woo-woo. It's science now.
yeah,
Just to kind of give you an example, with the gut-brain axis, they found that if you have stress, anxiety, depression, and all of that, that can affect your gut health. And your gut health, they've realized now with this new emerging evidence, can really affect your overall health. So, and it can affect, hormone balances. It can affect, it can create or contribute to autoimmune conditions. So there's all this evidence showing that your emotional health is 100% tied to your physical health.
yeah,
So there's that one aspect, right, to help with your physical health. But then there's also, to heal those emotional wounds, it gives you that motivation to take care of yourself and to
yeah.
have that self-care. Because a lot of times when you dig deep, a lot of times the reason we don't take care of ourselves and don't give ourselves the nutrition that we need and don't take that time out for ourselves is because we don't feel like we're worth it. And that's when we dig really deep. We start to see that it's like, oh, okay. And so we really have to go there.
Yeah.
You know,
And
we
I'm
really have.
really glad you brought that up because as hard as the physical changes are, maybe the emotional ones are the hardest
Yes.
because they're things that you might not want to really look at again, or you don't really realize how your experiences in life have shaped who you are today and who you continue to tell yourself that you are.
Yes.
And it's really interesting how I've seen over the years, the decades that I've been alive, that they're talking more about the gut health connection. And I remember as a kid, when I'm really nervous about something, you get a stomach ache. And
Yeah.
that's almost an immediate reaction. And everyone who has kids, they know that, if their kid says they have a stomach ache before a big game or before an exam, it's not usually a stomach ache, it's because they're stressed.
Yep.
So it's really nice that the scientific community is putting, research towards that connection between our emotions and our health. And, the work that you're doing by unpeeling those layers, you can actually, yeah, relieve a physical ailment by solving an emotional trauma. It's like
Absolutely.
the bonus, the
Yeah.
buy one, get one.
Totally. It's a twofer. Yeah, it's so great. And it's also, what is life? Like it's yes, we want to feel good, we want to feel healthy, we want to look good,
Yeah,
all of that stuff, but we also want to live like a purposeful, meaningful life. And
yeah.
sometimes it can be challenging to really reach your full potential when you're storing all of this emotional healing that needs to be done.
So do you
And
have a case study that you can give us some juicy details into?
yeah, actually, so I always think about this one client. Of course, I'm not going to use her real name. Let's call her Beth. I don't know. But she was hitting a milestone birthday, and she was feeling really pessimistic about aging because it was a later milestone birthday, not just midlife. We're talking past midlife, okay? So, she had developed all of these, health conditions, and so she had hired me to try to help her with her health. She wanted to lose some weight. She wanted to reverse some health conditions. And I remember actually the very first, it was our connection call. It was just our discovery call where I asked her something about self-worth. It got there. And she was like, I remember her being really taken aback. It's like, this feels like therapy.
Ah, you're being rather personal, Anna.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh, I apologize. It's just, just we got there. We went there. So hey,
Yeah.
like, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna ask it because I'll do that sometimes. Sometimes I'll ask questions that maybe people are afraid to ask. And of course I'll, be careful about it and ask permission and everything. But and so she thought about it and she was like, now that you asked that question, I'm not really sure. And so she pondered it for the whole time we were working together. And as she was approaching this milestone birthday, I asked her, how do you feel about this birthday coming up? And she's like, you know what? I think for the first time, I feel optimistic. I am not scared to age. I know I've gotten taken control of my health. I'm taking all of the steps that I need to do to turn things around. And I found my self-worth. I know that I'm worth it. And I'm doing this for myself because I want to, because I'm worth it and I deserve it. And I was like, girl,
The
okay.
party was starting. Woo!
Exactly.
So th-
Exactly. And of course we're still friends and then, and love
yeah.
her. And she's doing great.
So
Yeah.
on that note, what do you, as a coach, when you see someone, how do you tell that you should work on something physical or should you work on something emotional? Like, what is the Kickstarter? Because I can imagine it's kind of like chicken and egg,
Yeah.
but got to be a way for you to know which one you should focus on.
That's a great question. I'm not even sure I know how to answer that. Like, I want to say intuition, but I suppose it's just with experience and as a nurse and as a coach to just always be sitting with people and deeply listening. I think that is really it, is that deep listening portion, to really be present with them and really hear them and reflect and make sure that you're really getting it and seeing, trying to, and I think that's one of the first ways you can try to discern what's really important there. But I think it's really important to also create a safe container so that there is trust between the coach and the client, because if there isn't that trust,
Sure.
if you haven't built that rapport, they're not going to want to open up, they're not going to want to talk about these things. And so sometimes it takes a while. For some people it takes a long time. Some people are ready to open up like that. There's some people that are just like TMI. Right?
As a coach, you're
And that's
going,
great.
I don't know if I wanted to know that, but okay, continue.
I mean, it's always, as a coach, it's always so much easier when they're just ready to open up, right?
Yeah.
And like, okay, we can just go. Let's go. Well, we can take off running.
Yeah.
But there's some people that are more guarded, and they have absolute. It's understandable why they are. They have their reasons for being more guarded, and so it will take some time to build that relationship. And when they're ready, they'll usually bring something up that I can start to ask more questions about, get more curious about. So I think curiosity is really important as a coach, to
For
just
sure.
like without judgment, just hold that space and just listen and just be more curious and ask questions. And which is a difficult space to be in. I think that takes a lot of practice to really listen without judgment and be curious. Like that was hard to,
Oh, yeah.
to learn how to do. But so unbelievably rewarding and so necessary, because if you don't do that, then because you're not, I mean, as like I wouldn't want to work with a coach that I feel is judging me. That's
Yeah.
absolutely, like
That
I
is
wouldn't.
a really good point because, you're if you're asking someone what their diet is, and then of course, and even the person themselves knows that, okay, the bag of chips I eat before I go to bed is probably not the best thing, but I don't want to feel judged by it. So,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
it's building up that trust.
Totally. One of the things that I do with my clients is to have them keep a nutrition journal for a few days just so we can get an idea. But it's not necessarily the first thing that we do unless if they're comfortable with it, awesome. But for some, I'm like, you know what? You can do it, but don't share it with me yet.
Yeah.
And then when we get a little bit more comfortable and they're like, okay, let's just do it. Let me just show it to you. Just get
I'll
it over
show
with.
you my dirty secrets.
Exactly. That's what it's like for some people. Like there's a lot of shame behind it because
Yeah.
we're taught to be ashamed about what we eat, and I don't like that. Like eat what you want. It's fine. But if you want to improve on your nutrition, then we need to know where your starting point is. Where do you want to improve? So it's important to know that.
You're so right. Like it is more exposing than you could actually imagine.
No, I know. And it's funny because they get embarrassed and I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. I eat chips at midnight too. It's okay.
Did you want to talk about any of your plant medicine knowledge, background,
Ooh.
experience?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess the cat's out of the bag. So one of the things that I was doing here while I was in Mexico when I first moved here was I was training with some local healers in plant medicine. And so in our retreats, we were working with people with plant medicine. And so I have continued on that path to to be that bridge for people who are ready, who want to take it deeper.
But
And
let's be clear, plant medicine, that doesn't mean like celery.
no, it does. I mean, celery could be considered medicine in some circles, but yeah, no, we're talking like psilocybin, like mushrooms, ayahuasca, things like that. So the psychedelic plant medicines, and so these are really, really powerful healing modalities that have been around for millennia. And because of stigma and government control, we don't have as much access to them as we should. What I know from my research and from my personal experience and from my observational experience, that it is absolutely one of the most powerful modalities that we have on this earth as far as healing goes. And it's, of course, it's emotional healing and mental healing and all that. But as we already talked about, it translates to physical healing. For example, I was able to witness one man who had cancer, very advanced cancer. He couldn't even walk at this point, and he was introduced to plant medicine. I was not the one who facilitated this, so because it was just like, oh, that's out of my, that's too much for me. Let somebody else handle this one. But so it's not to say that the plant medicine was able to heal his cancer or anything like that. But what it did do was rejuvenate his spirit and give him that inspiration and that motivation and that realization that he's not ready to go. And so he started, he did the things he had to do. He improved his diet. He did, and all these things let one by one. He was fighting it because he's like, no, it's like I just now discovering life. I kind of like equate it to that, rediscovering life. And so anyway, complete remission, back to work, everything's completely normal, like nothing ever happened. You
Well,
know, so it's like it's not like a miracle in this case, but it's very powerful, right? And so that's an extreme example, of course. But what I've seen a lot is, women with anxiety or depression, or like deep-seated emotional trauma that they haven't been able to work through. For me personally, it was a lot of anxiety issues and a lot of, validation issues and things like that, that it was able to help me work through, something traumatic that happened as well. And it's been absolutely life-changing for me. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for it. I really don't think. I would probably have been on a different path.
amazing. That's kind of like I was viewing it or thinking about it as an emotional like
Yes.
reset, like st drop all of your negative thoughts about yourself. Let,
Yeah,
let, let's effing go,
it
That
can
kind of
absolutely be
feeling to
that. It can be that. Yeah, it can be a reset. It will show you things that you need to see, whether you like it or not sometimes. But it's always a gift. It's always a gift. And I found that personally. It showed me I had buried something under the rug for like 20 years or something like that, like just buried it. And it brought it back to the surface. And I was like, I didn't know I needed to deal with this. But then once I did, and I was able to, work through that and grieve it, I was healed by with all from all these things that I didn't even realize I needed healing from. But this was something that was holding me back, and I didn't even know. It's like more intelligent than we are because our egos are always trying to protect us, right? So it's like our egos are not going to let us go there, but this medicine will make us go there sometimes and just face it. So
wow.
it's not for everyone, like you have to be willing to deal with whatever comes up, but I can guarantee you that it's going to be healing, maybe not right away, but after you integrate it, then yeah,
Hey,
it's very, very powerful.
so that's the focus of your, what did you call it? Retreats, right?
So, yes. So with the retreats, we do offer plant medicine sessions. Yes.
Huh. Well, it's so different. Like it's not in my realm, in my world, but I love the stories that you tell about it, and it makes me curious for sure.
Yeah, I think
That's
everybody's a
not
little
brave enough to do it. I mean,
when it calls. That's what I always say. It just
yeah,
it'll find you or it won't, but it's good that you have an open mind about it.
yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah. I just love hearing your experience about it. And will you be bringing some of this knowledge to School of Humankind?
If you want it.
Let's do it.
I'll give you all what you want. Yes, absolutely. I'd love to share.
We'll send you a sample in the mail. All do it together. Hold your screen for steadiness.
It's funny. I have heard of facilitators doing online sessions, and I'm just like, ooh, that's
That,
interesting.
yeah, because I need more. I'm pretty sure I would need more than just a screen. Because if I pass out, what am I going to do?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I would want to be there in person. So yeah, I
And
would
I'm
recommend
glad you're a nurse because like God knows what else happens to your body when you're doing this.
that. Things happen. Things happen. There's always a
I
bathroom
feel a
nearby.
book in you. There's a bathroom nearby, but what if you don't have the wherewithal to use it?
That's
Anyway,
okay. It's okay. And this is what I always tell people because this is always a worry that people are like, well, what if this? What if that? I was like, a nurse. I've seen it all. I've cleaned it all up. It's all good. Don't worry. Don't even worry about that. I got you.
yes. Okay. Well, okay. Whew. But okay, I guess we're coming up to like I said, we could talk forever all the time. Um, let's talk about your your upcoming session is going to be on Tuesday. What is the date?
Yeah,
April
just
8th. Yeah, so people can catch that. So hormones, what? The three
hormones.
H's.
Yeah, the three H's: hormones, health, and happiness. Your
Happy.
complete roadmap to thriving after 40. I know it's so long. I always make them long for some reason.
And so men,
Uh-huh.
do they have estrogen? Men have estrogen.
Yeah. Yeah. Not
So
like not nearly as much as us,
do
but yeah.
they just like stay consistent in their hormone makeup their entire life? Like, why?
Well, the same as actually women and men, testosterone will start to decline in like our 20s and 30s, but it's like a steady, nice little decline, right? And that's the same for men and women. Uh, with women though, with estrogen and the progesterone as well, it's like it's like this. It's not a steady decline, which is why a lot of times women will wake up one day going like, why do I feel completely different than yesterday? Like you just feel like a completely different person all of a sudden. It's because it's just it's like this drops off a cliff and then it stays steady for a little bit, so it's but yeah, so men, I would like to invite men to my workshop one day
Yeah,
because every man out there has a loved one that is going through this. And I would love if men could understand it better instead of just being like, oh, she's being all
yeah,
crazy today.
yeah.
Like, no, there's a reason we're being all crazy today. It's literally biological.
So you can understand your loved one as she scratches out your eyes. It's okay, honey. I get you. I listen to Anna.
Thank you. I should just make one like solely for men is be
I
like,
think
just come,
so.
let me tell you what's going on, men, and let me tell you what to say and what not to say.
Oh, that is a winner workshop
Yeah.
with
You're just
cheat
giving me an
sheet,
idea.
right? Here's a handout.
Yeah. But yeah, so the next week's is not for men. I'm sorry. That's a future one. Just because I find that when women want to be really open and be able to share, to have that space where it's women only is just a lot safer container for us. And so with these workshops, it's all women. But yeah, I would totally do one for men or co-ed in the future as well. But yeah, it's kind of like breaking down what's the most important stuff to
Yeah.
focus on as far as our health goes and as far as relief of these, perimenopause and menopause symptoms goes, because of all that stuff out there is like, I'm just
Yeah.
grabbing at whatever. It's like, okay, let me just break it down for you as simply as I can, tell you what the really important stuff is, tell you what works and what really doesn't work. And, you take whatever information you need according to where you are in your journey and you apply it,
Yeah.
and it's really just trying to cut out all the fluff and, addressing all of those different aspects. Like I think women tend to hyper focus too. It's like, I'm just going to fix my nutrition or I'm just going to get more exercise, and you kind of have to approach it holistically and kind of do a little bit of all of it. But if you do it step by step, like I was saying, week by week,
Yeah.
then it's a lot easier. So I just kind of want to give you that roadmap, right? So that's what that is like, okay, these are all the things that you eventually have to touch on, but you don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah.
So take what you need and save the rest for later.
Well, I am looking, excuse me, very much for, is that a perimenopause thing where you lose your voice?
Probably. It's like
Probably.
everything's a perimenopause thing.
I'll just blame it all on perimenopause, but I'm very much looking forward to that talk. And thank you so much for joining School of Humankind. I think everyone can see your bubbly personality and why you are a fantastic addition to our faculty. So
Aw.
excuse my voice. Maybe I should get you to practice closing up these workshops. But no, thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to your workshops. And that's it from us today at School of Humankind. Unless do you have a closing thought?
Closing thought is, please, wherever you are, whoever you are, if you're watching this, get in touch with us and interact with us. We want to give you what you want. We want to hear your feedback because it's not just us trying to talk to a screen all the time, right?
Right. Yes,
Yeah, so that's it.
the
Like just
perfect. Yeah.
everybody like make this a community, because community is so important. I really believe in the power of community. So just to kind of plant that seed to invite people to be more of a part of the community.
And look how fun we are.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Anna, for sharing your life and your background and what you're going to be contributing to School of Humankind. It's a pleasure to have you here. So thank you, everyone who's tuning in and people that are watching the replay. If you can't catch Anna's workshop live, then it'll be in our YouTube library and also School of Humankind library. So just check out our website, www.schoolofhumankind.com. Thanks and bye for now.